Welcome to another episode of Charlie Drives. Today we are in the Lotus Esprit. As you'll probably guess by the title, it's very much a love-hate relationship with this car. I do love it. I do love the car. Not saying I hate it at all. But I have just picked up the largest mechanical bill I've ever received in this car. So, what happened this time? I was out driving, you know, as you do. These cars don't like to sit around, and I think during lockdown, as you'll probably realise from the lack of content on the YouTube, the cars did not get driven nearly enough, to the extent where actually this car, I probably paid the price for that, if anything. So my advice is, if you have a car like this, make sure that you actually do drive it. Don't let it sit around. Generally, the sort of higher mileage Esprits are the ones that are ironically a little bit more reliable, because generally they've been looked after, and they need to be looked after in order to do that many miles, so kind of makes sense in my mind. But anyway, this particular bill that I've recently received was predominantly down to the brakes, and actually I was quite lucky. I went out for a drive, just took the car for a drive, let it breathe, and I came back and I noticed actually that the brakes were so hot. It was the passenger side front brake was smoking. I actually gave the car a wash afterwards and literally putting some pressure washing the wheels, and I was getting so much steam from the front disc brake. So I took it out again and realised that actually what was happening was that the brake pad wasn't releasing altogether, I guess. So it was basically just creating loads of friction and loads of heat as I was just driving around, not even using the brakes. It then got to the point where actually I was kind of like, I really need to probably stop driving and let the discs cool down before you know, we have a fire or whatever. So I stopped the car and then realised that the car had manifested a nice little oil leak, or large oil leak. So one of the oil cooler on the driver's side had actually failed, and that was leaking all over the place as well. So luckily I managed to get the car to GST Performance, and I just dumped it there, made a mess of his forecourt with all the oil, and basically got Gerald to sort out the problem. Now, over time, and this is quite a common issue with the Esprits, is that the Delco Moran braking ABS system is pretty poor, to be honest. So a lot of people actually report problems with the Delco Moran system, and you'll get indications on the dashboard saying that the ABS has stopped working. So you get a number of issues. I've heard about some pretty scary issues that people have reported where they've hit the brakes and nothing really happens. So ultimately, with the whole brake system, brake problem that I was having at the time, I decided to bite the bullet and just basically have the ABS system totally ripped out of the car. We're now running Ian Lord's braking system. Ian has produced a number of these units, and honestly it is so much better now. Having a car that can actually slow down makes a huge difference. And and you'll see all of the gubbins that Gerald pulled out of the car in terms of the old ABS system. So basically the car no longer has an ABS system, and as a result of it, it performs so much better. You can approach corners and you've got a bit of predictability now with regards to how the brakes are going to actually perform. I mean, I wouldn't say that I'm still running kind of bog standard discs, and the calipers also are. I think they are pretty much OEM in terms of what the car came with. So it's, you know, the braking performance in the car isn't amazing, but the difference between the braking now and how it was is night and day. So that, combined with the oil leak, basically set me back about £4,300, including VAT. So it was a huge, horrible pill to swallow. But actually, if anything, the expense of getting that done, it was something I was aware that I needed to get done at some point, and that braking issue helped me make the decision to just rip it all out and get something decent in the car. So that's what that's what I've done at the moment. And as a result, it stops. Like, just hitting the brake, you know, it's actually got a good feel to the pedal. I mean, it's had new calipers put in, new brake pads put in. So I think the brake pads are yellow stuff brake pads, and they're still bedding in a little bit, but it really does. I mean, you hit the brakes and it stops. Obviously you have no ABS anymore, so the front, I think the front left there did lock up somewhat, so you've got to be a little bit careful, but that is so much better than the previous scenario or previous situation with the car. So it's much more enjoyable. It's much more enjoyable to drive, just taking it out, and actually I think in doing so, I'm a little bit more influenced to actually drive the car more regularly. So I think all in all, it's a job worth doing. All Esprit owners, at some point, if you own any of the sort of post ABS models, they will all have this rubbish ABS system in it, I think. So I'm not sure if the V8s had the same issue, same braking system, but even still, you know, if you're running a S4 and S4S, you'll have this braking system, or my previous braking system, which was awful. So it's what a lot of people do, and I'll show you a shot of what the kit looks like from what you can see under the bonnet of the car. I think Ian's earlier versions of the braking kit were designed to be installed in the back. I think the only disadvantage with it having it in the front is you can hear kind of like a chirping sound from it. But honestly, well, I mean, I can't hear it now. I barely notice it. So it's really no big issue. So yeah, that was a bit of a shock to the system. Oil leaks, of course, happen in these cars fairly regularly, so you know, that was just part of the course, I imagine. But I've had both oil coolers replaced now, so hopefully we won't have any big issues with the oil coolers in the future. But all in all, what I've got here is I've got a file. I've got a file here full of invoices. And I'll stop the car in a moment and I'll just talk you through the cost of owning this car since I've owned it. So I've owned it for about 7 years now, and it has cost me about £13,000 mechanically in the 7-year period that I've owned it. So it works out to be, I think, all in all, you've got a budget, and I think in my mind when I was buying this car, I was kind of thinking, okay, let's budget about 1,500 quid per year for mechanical mishaps and just staying on top of the car, staying on top of the maintenance and things like that. So that roughly works out to be, if my maths is correct, it works out to be about £2,000 per year. So I'm running about £500 per year richer than maybe what I anticipated. But then there's been a few things, like a few improvements that I've decided to make to the car, which potentially you could argue could have been optional. So like getting new exhaust system fitted. So it's, you know, yeah, it's expensive. It's not cheap to run a 90s supercar. I don't think anyone. I don't know who I was kidding when I thought maybe it would be cheap, but it's not. It really isn't cheap. I would say the appreciation of the car probably makes up for a little bit of it, but that is if you can sell it. I mean, I don't really know what the Esprit market is doing at the moment, but you know, if you're looking for sort of £25,000 to £30,000 for your Lotus Esprit, you can expect to be waiting quite a long time to basically sell that. So, you know, all in all, I mean, it's funny, I've only done about 7,500 miles since I've owned the car. And I think I worked out that £13,000 over that many miles works out to be about £1.80 a mile. So it's pretty frightening. £1.80 a mile before you put petrol in it, just on mechanical upkeep and looking after all of the issues that the car has had. I suppose you're probably thinking, oh yeah, well that's it for a while, you know. I've spent £4,500 on it mechanically. Hopefully, I won't have to spend any more money on it in a few years' time. So I'm obviously hoping that is the case, but you need to be prepared for everything. And the next thing I'm trying to anticipate what is the next thing that's going to happen to the car. You know, what is the next thing that's going to go wrong? And we have noticed that the clutch release bearing is making an awful noise. Well, it's not making an awful noise. It was making a very, very loud noise when the clutch was engaged previously, and I think that was just down to not being driven enough, because it has started to get a little bit quieter. So I'm hoping that doesn't mean the clutch has to come off and the gearbox has to come out and all this other stuff. Fingers crossed it doesn't, because this car has had clutch work done on it. It's also had gearbox work done on it, so I really don't want to have to go through that process again. I am getting stronger petrol smells from the cabin. Now that's another common Lotus Esprit issue. I'd be interested to hear in the comments anyone else who's had quite a strong smell of petrol in the cabin. I can tell you right now, you would not want to light up a cigarette in here. It's quite funny. I ironically look at the ashtrays and think, bloody hell, wouldn't want to light up a cigarette, because it's pretty bad. I mean, you know, getting a bit high on fumes here while I'm driving, so it does get worse. If I open windows or if I open a sunroof, it is noticeably worse. So a lot of people have said that could be the fuel breather. Can you hear the brakes squeaking? So it could be, I think it could be one of three things from what I understand. One, it could be the fuel breather pipe, although I've had both of the quarter trim panels removed. I actually removed them this week to just inspect it. I couldn't see any splits in the fuel breather pipe, so unless it's somewhere up here, which I haven't ripped it all out up here, unless it's somewhere there, it won't be the fuel breather pipe, which means that it could potentially mean that one of the tanks is rusted and rotten and it needs to be replaced. So that could be the next big bill that I might anticipate. Now the reason why it's going to be a big bill is because I believe the engine needs to come out for the fuel tanks to be replaced. I think it's a real difficult job if you don't pull the engine out. So that's what I've been heard. That's what I've been told. If that is the case, then yeah, I don't know. It could be another couple of grand. So not such a good one, although that is probably the next thing on my list of things that would need to eventually be done on this car. So it will have to be done at some point. So maybe once that's done, after that point, the car like triggers brim at that stage. It might as well be a brand new car, because I think I've replaced pretty much everything on it. And I think, you know, in a way it's quite a nice thing, because I think at that point I wouldn't mind doing sort of getting the interior redone, the sort of headlining and stuff's looking a lot it's quite dated now, and maybe get the headlining replaced with something a little bit more modern, like maybe a bit of Alcantara or something like that, make it look a little bit more kind of a little bit more up to date, rather than this kind of cream felt type of stuff which doesn't look very nice anymore. So things like that, getting things like that done on the car will definitely keep it going and keep its upkeep and things like that. So I think, you know, there are loads and loads of things I would like to do to the car, and obviously the fuel tanks being one of them. That will be the next big job, I imagine. The third thing that it could potentially be, so if it's not the fuel tanks, I have read that somewhere down here beneath the gear shifter there's a seal or something, or a rubber seal that could be split, and therefore you sometimes manage to get petrol fumes from there. Don't ask me how or why. I have no idea why you would be getting petrol fumes from this area here. Something I read on a forum, so it could be completely rubbish. Be interested to know anyone else who's had a petrol smell coming from that area of the car itself. All in all, it is a lovely car. I love it a lot. I don't love the big bills, but it's a classic. It's a 90s supercar. Like, that's what you've got to put up with. You've got to be prepared for those expenses on the car. And I will pull over in a moment just to go through some invoices with you as I negotiate traffic. But it does sound great driving through a village at the moment, so can't really gun it. But yeah, those brakes are squeaking. I imagine that's because of the new pads we've got in it, obviously performance pads and stuff. And anyway, I don't really know. So I will find a place to pull over so we can just look at these invoices. So let's run through these invoices. So just to give you an idea, just realised I haven't got my phone with me, so even if I had broken down on that drive, I'd have been totally screwed. And actually my phone's got all of the information on it that I need, so did I really leave it? Anyway, right, so just to run through, and I suppose if you're looking at buying one of these cars, if you've got a folder like this, right, these are all my invoices, okay? So these are all my invoices. Yeah, there's pages and pages and pages of stuff there, right? So those are mine. Then I've got all of the previous owners' invoices as well. So there's a hell of a lot of invoices in here as well from the previous owner. He was a little bit more organised than me. He had a little sort of plastic envelope for every single little job that he did, whereas I've just basically put all of mine in one because I've got so many of them. But yeah, I mean, yeah, there's packets and packets and packets. I mean, I haven't actually gone through all of the invoices from the previous ones, but I'd hazard a guess that, you know, maybe 30 grand's been spent on this car mechanically, which is probably a little bit ridiculous. But anyway, just to run through with you guys what I've spent on this car, just to go through sort of the history of what's been spent. Let's work backwards. So I bought the car in 2016. In 2016, not much was really done. Had the car checked over, had an MOT done, headlamp relay. Total cost of the car mechanically was 250 quid in 2016. 2017 was like the ridiculous year. It cost me £6,744 in 1 year. And some of the jobs there included radiator failure, gearbox. We lost second gear, so that was when I was in, I can't remember where I was. So Lotus in the Peak, yeah, Lotus in the Peak. Lost second gear, so I had to have the gearbox out. That went to Alan Voigt's for a rebuild. What else happened in 2017? Earlier on in 2017 I had the clutch replaced because the clutch was slipping, and had a new exhaust system put in, which was the Quicksilver exhaust system. So there was all of that stuff. So with the new tyres adding to the wheel, clutch slave cylinder and an MOT, that year it cost me 6,744, which is ridiculous. 2018 didn't cost me a thing because I think I didn't drive it very much. So basically 2018, 2019, so yeah, 2019 cost me about £881. The main things that were done then was new oxygen sensor, because the car was running really rough. So we had new oxygen sensor put in, replaced all of the spark plugs. So that was that. 2021, we had the cam belt service done, so that was £1,690. So yeah, I mean, as I said earlier in the video, what really costs money in these cars is when they don't get driven. So I think during COVID, the car didn't really get driven much. The cam belts needed to be done anyway, so that job in itself is normally roughly around that. I had had a isolator switch fitted to the battery as well. And then the latest bill, which is basically, as I mentioned, the brake system, front calipers, new pads, new brake kit, headlamp motor needed to be rebuilt because it was like only going halfway up. New oil cooler, new wiper blade. Oh my god, it was amazing. Transformed the whole driving experience having a new wiper blade put in. Probably about 20 quid it cost, something like that. Anyway, yeah. Oh no, £85. £85? No, that's not right. Don't even know what it is on here. But yeah, some other things I've done to the car as well, which I'll show you now. So I'm currently in the process of repainting the window frames because they're starting to rust. So I'm sanding those down and repainting those. So I'm doing that myself. And also, as I mentioned in one of my previous videos, I've also had the rear number plate plinth replaced with a solid black one, which has also got the Lotus logo in it, or the Lotus badge in it, because it's just something I really wanted. And I think, I don't know, I've always liked the sort of the earlier cars that had the black plinth, as well as the later cars that had the black plinth, and I never really understood why they didn't do that with the S4. So I've basically put in an S4S, or, you know, a V8 black number plate plinth. Obviously it doesn't have the V8 badge on it, but yeah, it looks really, really nice, I think. Be interested to know your comments on that too. But yeah, all in all, that's pretty much it. So I'm broke now. No more car purchases, no more car expenses. Fuel prices are through the roof. So yeah, this won't be the last video though, I promise. So hope you've enjoyed watching it. Give us a thumbs up if you like the video, and make sure you're subscribed to the channel. There will be more Lotus content coming, there'll be more Land Rover content coming, and yeah, I'll be interested to hear your thoughts on this one. Anyway, have a good one, take care, cheers, bye.